What time is it? It's fight time. Boxing fans in New Mexico, welcome. This is a special edition of Lake City Boxing Showcase of New Mexico, sponsored by Perez Collision. They were voted #1 paint and body repair best of the best. We're on Proview Network, Sports Channel 26, and today, you're not going to believe it, man. Boxing fans in New Mexico, we have an exclusive interview. She doesn't do this to anybody, but for the first time in the history of this sports desk and in New Mexico, we're here with boxing royalty on the big stage. This woman, she wears many hats: mother, daughter, wife. Then she changed hats, changed gears, and she became a boxing negotiator and promoter. She managed the greatest fighter out of New Mexico, Johnny Tapia. Let me introduce Teresa Tapia. Hi, Teresa.
Hi,
welcome on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Before we talk about your backstory and who you are, because people are very curious about you, in life and all that. You've had one busy month, man. It's been really busy. We ran into each other at the city council about a month ago, and we talked at the podium to the councilman to change Wells Park to Johnny Tapia Community Center. We did that. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
And then last weekend, you might even have jet lag. I don't know, right? But you went with your family, the boys, to New York City, right?
Yes.
And to the International Boxing Hall of Fame.
Yes.
And, boxing fans in New Mexico, the first time Johnny went up, he got called up and he got it in the National Boxing Hall of Fame, along with Evander Holyfield, Marcos Antonio Barreras, and Jerry Roth, Barry Thompson, Eddie Booker. And this has been really, really exciting. How are you holding up?
I think I think it's still all surreal, It was a great trip. I mean, the biggest honor that you can ever obtain in boxing, and Johnny was the first to do it. Well, I should say Bobby Foster was the first to do it from New Mexico.
Right.
We
Glory
have
to
to
Bobby
give him,
Foster.
yes. And Johnny was the second to do it. He was a first-round pick on his ballot, which is very impressive. A lot of people, they'll get on the ballot, but they stay years and years before they're chosen. Well, Johnny was chosen, and I mean, it's just made all of us immensely proud of all of his accomplishments.
Well, when the boxing fans in New Mexico, when we heard about it, we said it on the show right away. He's still putting us on the map.
Yes.
That's now from my research, it turns out that they do a parade. Were you in the parade?
Yes, we were.
What kind of car were you in?
I was actually, it's funny that you ask, I was in a convertible that was driven by the executive producer of Showtime. His name is Earl Fash. We have been part of their boxing family for years. We went over there after the Danny Romero fight. We actually signed with Don King and became Showtime fighters, and Earl's just a great guy. So it was his car. It was a convertible that Johnny loved. It was an old GTO.
Oh my God, that's cool, man.
Was, yes.
Or people, now, do they line the streets of?
Yes.
What's the city was in?
It was in Canastota, New York, and by their calculations, there's 30,000 people that come out to the parade and to the actual induction.
Oh, there it is.
That's it right there. So as what you're seeing right here on camera or on video, the boys and I are sitting on the edge of the car on the ledge. Earl's driving, and we were just so impressed with this town and their hospitality that we're recording them. As they're recording us, we're recording them, because I mean, this is part of history.
That is cool, man.
It is.
I mean, just representing New Mexico in general.
Yes.
Now they have this place called Greystone on Chapel Street, and it's a meet and greet. How was that?
I mean, it was awesome. You sit there, and I have attended these events in the past while Johnny was alive, and it was actually pretty fun when he was here, because he used to make everybody laugh. One of his favorite people he liked to mess with was Marvelous Marvin Hagler. But you know, without Johnny,
Marvin.
yes, without Johnny being present, you know, of course, I'm a lot more shy and low key than Johnny was. So, I was just humbled to even be in the same room with these great men of boxing. I mean, I was.
But they know you.
They do, and that's what makes it so. I mean, you're in awe of them, and they're congratulating you and telling you what a great job you did for your husband. I mean, you know, so it's just like I said, you hear it from them, and it's just the most humbling experience, and it makes you feel like, gosh, I did something right.
You know, do they ever question, how's the chili, or they question New Mexico, these guys? Or?
You know, what's funny is as soon as they see us, it's like Albuquerque. You know, that's what they say. That's the first thing. It's Albuquerque. You know, and 505. You hear
Duke City.
Well, we had people there from Australia. We had people there from London. We had people from all over that came to view and witness Johnny making history once again, and that's what they knew. 505.
That's cool,
Yes.
man. The great pictures they put in. Now,
Yes.
The Banquet of Champions. What's that all about?
That is on a Saturday night. It's a formal event. It is. They have just it's at the Convention Center in Syracuse. It's a beautiful event. They have all the champions, past and present, that have attended it. They all set up on the dais, and they just go over. And I had to do a speech at this night, which was very nerve-wracking. And you have people up there, like I said, Marvin Hagler, as you can tell, he's one of my favorite fighters. They had.
Who are you in awe of when you see them?
You know, it's funny. My sons are going to be fighting soon, and so my 12-year-old has been emulating Marvelous Marvin Hagler. He's a southpaw, and he fights like him. Mm-hmm. My oldest he's studying Pernell Whitaker. They're both there. Yeah. So I think, I mean, you're in awe on all of them. I mean, Holyfield was there. You're sitting there, and you're amongst the best. Barrera, the guy's the nicest person in the world that you'll ever meet.
Vargas was there, right?
Of course, Fernando.
Yeah.
He was there. There was just so many. Leon Spinks was there. Michael Spinks was there.
Is this dude still gone? Or is that the brother? I don't know. What? Leon, don't get mad.
I didn't notice. Of course, the classy Jimmy Lennon Jr. Yes. He was there to accept the award on behalf of his father. Jerry Roth, who actually judged a couple of Johnny's fights.
And he is?
He was a judge who was inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
He had some very controversial decisions, but he deserves to be there. Great man with great family. There was just a lot of greats there, so many to name, and I know I forgot a lot of them, but I don't mean to leave anybody out.
Well, I researched and I picked up some snippets of your speech, and boxing fans of New Mexico, you got to check this out. Ring Magazine stated you gave an emotional tribute. Standing ovation.
Yes.
Then another one, which is great. I got chills, because, you guys are part of our lives in New Mexico, in the boxing family. Mm-hmm. And you said the peak moment was when he was off for 3 years and he came back. In Johnny's career, he told you this is the peak moment when he fought for the WBO title. And he beat Henry Martinez.
Yes.
After a 3-year layoff.
4 year.
4 year.
Mm-hmm.
And then you quoted Johnny as saying, "You have to kill me or beat me."
Yes.
To do that. Now, the one thing that really stood out from your speech, which I just admire, is that you and Johnny representing, you guys have never stopped talking about Albuquerque and New Mexico fans.
Yes, true.
Because we're good fans.
Yes, you guys are the best. I mean, I know that people often say that Johnny put New Mexico on the map, but they also put Johnny on the map because if it wasn't for his fans, he wouldn't have been able to go in there and fight with such confidence and lift up his home state. So it works both ways, and Johnny knew that. So he was very grateful to have the fan base that he did. And I always tell people, like Saturday night we had a speech, and the speech on Saturday night was a little bit more emotional. It was more about Johnny used to often wonder, where do I belong? He wandered through this world and he used to say, I don't know where I fit in. you know, I tell him, you fit in with us, you fit in with me, you fit in with the children, you fit in with boxing, you know, and he'd say, no, you know, he felt restless after the murder of his mom. So, you know, so it became very emotional on Saturday night because I, you know, had to give my speech, and I actually found his home. I told him, you know, the speech was dedicated to Johnny, and it says, you know, after 20 years of the question that you asked me while we were married, I finally know where you belong. You belong here in Kansas City, New York, immortalized with the great champions who have came, you know, before you and who will come after you, and that's where you belong. So, I mean, it was just a very emotional thing, but I do believe that. I believe that he finally found his place. And I, you know, just have so much, you know, love for the people of Canastota and everywhere that has made Johnny,
yes,
you know, a Hall of Fame fighter. Yes. Sunday, I wanted to make it a little bit lighter, and I wanted to get back to Johnny's true fans, which is the New Mexicans. And yes. And so I kind of used the whole thing about Johnny fighting Henry Martinez because that was the most magical moment of Johnny's life. And so that's what I wanted to bring up. And so I took a page out of my book and basically read it. And it was all about New Mexico and how that moment in history of October 12th of 1994 is what shaped Johnny and prepared him for the induction this past weekend.
You're writing a book.
Yes.
You got the title yet?
I don't want to say it.
Undercover.
I do.
Yeah, that's
but,
very cool. You know, you know, after that, you know, what you said in the speech about the fans is that we stuck with him through resurrection, tragedy, and triumph.
Yes.
And he could not do it without the fans. And like we're talking off camera about every individual that's born is just God's creation, one in a million. We all have this potential, but some go beyond that potential and go to extraordinary things. And it was just the last thing you said in the speech, and you said it just a few seconds ago. Now he's immortalized with the greats, man.
Yes.
That boom, man, and you. Oh, I hit the mic. I'm sorry, but for some reason, just the idea of falling from grace, coming back up, all that stuff, we all do it, and it's great to see an example of that, and you being part of that. We're going to talk about that in a second. I just think it's wonderful that this happened in our lifetime.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because, and he's immortalized, and all the, Hector Huracan Munoz, Fidel Maldonado's fighting for a big bout in Texas, as we see. Holly's out there, and they all have in their heart the sangre of being a Tapia type fighter, never back up, never surrender. I said on the show all the time, we got the toughest fighters in the world, bar none. Bring it, you don't believe, And it's not about strength. It's about heart. And the people in New Mexico, even the fans, it's all about heart. We're hardworking people. We're dedicated people.
I agree.
But and some take it to a different level. Like Urlacher, Johnny Tapia, Danny Romero, Bobby Foster, Holly, so many, Diego Sanchez. I mean, there's just so many here, so many of different genre sports that we kick butt and take names.
Yes.
Now, we're gonna talk. I'd like to talk to you about you. Okay?
Okay.
Is that cool?
Okay.
Okay. I'd like to ask you, Teresa, who are you and where were you raised?
I was actually born here in Albuquerque. I lived here till I was 11, and then I moved to California with my dad, and I was raised the rest of my life in North Hollywood. I came back as an adult to New Mexico, and that's when I met Johnny. And so I.
How'd you meet him? Where at? Was it a party or something? Did he come up to you and flirt with you? Or?
Oh yeah, he was very very.
Animated, right? He's
very
charmer.
animated, very persuasive. He just didn't give up. I met him it was a daytime barbecue. I was actually with a friend of mine, and she was dating my cousin, and we were going to this place to pick up my cousin, and there was this guy that was sitting on the kitchen counter, bigger than life. And I remember he came up to me instantly, and of course I shot him down. Had to hurt his feelings.
Did you? That's cool.
I did. And but you know what? It ignited something in Johnny, and he just didn't give up. 2.5 weeks later, we were married. So we were together and married for 20 years.
That's see, no, we want to know, I know you're writing the book, but this is an interesting question that I thought of last night. How did you transcend from being Johnny's lady, getting thrown into the boxing world and becoming a promoter and manager? Was it easy? How did you do that?
It wasn't easy, it wasn't planned, it was necessary. So what happened was Johnny, being Johnny, was in trouble, and here in New Mexico, part of his plea agreement was that he would leave the state for 18 months, and he would go to a outpatient rehab, and he wasn't even allowed to come back into the state without getting permission. It was a kind of a unique style of approach that Frank Allen, the judge, had for Johnny, which I love that man. He's gone now, but if it wasn't for him, I don't know what would have happened and what Johnny's legacy would have been.
So everything falls into place for reasons?
It does. So we moved, when this was happening, we received a call from Oscar De La Hoya, who was a good friend of Johnny's.
The big O? Golden boy?
Yes. Oscar called and he said, I heard about your troubles, bring Johnny out here. And I have a camp here in Big Bear, and he can use Robert Alcazar, who's my trainer, and you guys use the gym, and I'll get you guys set up in a place. And I said, well, okay, so a lot of stuff happened to get Johnny to the point of Big Bear, but a lot of crazy stuff just getting him there. It involved us like literally having to kidnap him and get him to Big Bear. There's a lot of funny stories in between. We just don't have enough time.
It's going to be in the book.
It'll be in the book, and we just don't have enough time to go over all of his shenanigans. But we ended up in Big Bear, and Bob Case, who was a sports agent of Johnny's, he was a great sports agent. He was to all the baseball greats and football, and also the legendary Mickey Rooney. He was actually...
he was good friends with him, right?
Yes. He was an agent.
Did you meet him?
Yes. Yes, actually.
He was married 8 times.
I know. You would laugh at him with his jokes. But anyways, so Bob came over, and we were sitting there and talking about, because Top Rank was putting the pressure on, because at that time, Paul Chavez, who was Johnny's manager and trainer, we said he wasn't going to make the trek to Big Bear, and Johnny couldn't come here. So we were at a standstill, and it ended up causing us to go to court with Paul to break the contract, and then we ended up with there was no manager and no trainer. So Robert Alcazar stepped in for Johnny's trainer, left us an open spot for a manager. So Bob Case basically sat there with us and said, why doesn't Teresa do it? And
who said that?
Bob Case. And Johnny, was like, no, she's a woman. And I said the same thing though. I was like, yeah, I was not even allowed to go to his training camp. I wasn't allowed to go to dressing rooms. I wasn't.
You weren't allowed, being his wife, to train all that? Was it that male chauvinist at that time?
Women were not allowed or wanted anywhere. And so when they threw it on us, we both thought Bob was crazy.
Yeah.
And Bob said, look, this woman has literally been arrested for you. She's been there when you've been resurrected. She's been there for all the thick and the thin.
Right.
And there was so many things at this point that I had already done for Johnny. And he said, who better to take care of you than this woman? And then Johnny kind of said, yeah, but they're all going to laugh at me. And Bob said, they can laugh at you all, and you can laugh all the way to the bank. You're going to keep it in the family. So that's how it all started. Johnny calls up Aram and says, I have a manager, my wife. Oh, they thought, you're crazy. You are crazy. So I had to go and have my first dealings with Bob Aram.
We're going to talk about those things.
So, that's how it all started. It started all back in 1995.
91?
95.
95.
Yes.
That's interesting. Nobody knows this. We hear snippets about that and whatever. But when we first heard the boxing community that, we go, what, but that's the transition of boxing today. Women, you did it. You did it. You're one of the first. It seemed to be been a good fit, right? Being his manager.
It worked for us, and I think Johnny, being as crazy as he was, prepared me to be a boxing manager, because there was nothing that I feared with these guys, because I was already living a very crazy life behind closed doors with Johnny. I mean, there were so many incidents, but anyhow, it was, so when I would go there in front of these men and they would try to intimidate me, it didn't work because they didn't know my life, and so it didn't. None of it worked. It didn't matter, and so I sat there. Johnny had his battles in the ring. I have my battle scars out of the ring with all these men, you know. And we got to the point finally where I became to a point of where they respected me, and I was actually the first woman in the California Boxing Hall of Fame that they honored me for my accomplishments.
That's cool.
Yes, as a female manager. And other than that, the only other person was Jackie Callan at that time. It was just unheard of.
You know. Tell me about the first time you negotiated. I mean, you know, here you are, you know, this woman, and you walk into this big office with a long desk, and there's either Bob Arams or Don King, and these guys are professional businessmen. It's like Donald Trump. You know, these guys are savvy, and they see you, and you know, them being in that mindset. How did you get the business skills to handle the big promoters? How did you do it?
My first try at being Johnny's manager was with Bob Arum. Bob Arum is a Harvard Law School graduate. He was a special prosecutor in New York. Very, very smart man. That was what I was up against. Here I was 22 years old. I mean, I had some...
Very green?
Yes, very green. Very, very green. So I walk into his office, and before that, you know, Johnny and Bob and I had our meeting of what Johnny wanted out of his contract. And so I walked in there, and I was shaking, and I sat down across from Bob and, you know, all of his staff, and I'm just this young girl, and I remember...
Just you and Johnny?
Nope, not
Just
even
you?
Johnny. My Johnny and my brother Robert stayed in the lobby while I went in alone. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm across from this man, and I'm already intimidated just walking in. And I mean, I'm not kidding you, I couldn't stop shaking. Anyhow, so I'm looking over at Bob, and I'm telling him, I push what we want, you know, it's all typed up, and Bob says, no. You're not getting that. This is what you're getting.
Shut you down right away.
Yeah, right away. Gives me the old contract. He says, you're getting this, and that's it. Take it or leave it. So I said, well, I'll check with Johnny. So I walked out of the office, and I'll never, ever forget. This was the turning point of my whole life and Johnny's in the whole boxing, you know, his whole span of his boxing career. I remember walking out, and Johnny says, did you get everything we asked for? And he was happy. He was just like this, you know, excited, you know, child. And he looks up at me, and he's like, did you get this? And I said, no. And he's like, well, did you get that? And I was like, no. And he's like, well, what did you get? I said, the same contract. It broke my heart, because I remember Johnny looked at me, and he put his head down, and he says, you don't really believe in me either.
Oh.
That did it. And I thought,
yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, because we had all just told him that he deserved more, and we're going to get him more. I marched right back in, scared as I was. I threw the contract down. I said, nope, Bob, I'm not taking this. I want what I want, and if we don't get it, then Johnny's not fighting. He said, you just cost Johnny his career. He said, get out of my office.
Did he? Bob Arum,
so
really?
I walked out of his office, and I was scared, but I held my head up high, and Johnny says, did you get what I want? I said, nope, you got fired. And they said, let's go home. So we drove from Las Vegas back to Big Bear.
Yeah.
The longest drive of my life, and it was him, and it was Johnny, my brother, and myself, and we're sitting there, and I'm scared. I mean, I'm just like, God, what did I do? What did I do? But I'm trying to act strong. Right. Anyhow, day after day was going by, and Johnny's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I'm like, I act like, you know, like I knew everything. I said, don't worry, it's going to all work out.
The gamble.
It was a gamble, a big gamble. 3 days later, there's a knock on the door. I answer it. It's Bob Arum himself. He had never been up to visit any other fighter other than Oscar. So when he walked, you know, he's at the door. I, of course, acted like I knew it was going to happen,
cool.
You know, and I said, I was like, oh, come in. And I told Johnny, go ahead and go outside. You and Gordy go out to the back, you know, go play basketball or something, because I didn't want them to hear us fighting over him. 2 reasons why I didn't let Johnny in on negotiations. Number one, I never wanted Johnny to feel like a piece of meat. And number two, Johnny was so protective of me. Had something went wrong and somebody disrespected me, Johnny would knock him out.
Yeah, he'd fire
so those were the 2 reasons. Anyhow, I sit there, and Bob throws the contract, and he says, you got what you wanted. And he walks out the door. Well, I'm happy because I got what I wanted. okay, so you know, fast forward it, Johnny's next fight. I learned the hard way. I remember Johnny's going to walk in the ring, and you know, Bob Arum, he finds me and he gives me a check, and I said, that's not what we agreed on. That's not what's in the contract.
Oh, he's trying to.
He says, so sue me.
Oh.
And I said, Bob, we have a contract. He said, so I'll tie you up in court so long, Johnny will be all bad before he fights again. And I said, oh, okay, that's how it is. He said, welcome to boxing, young lady.
Orale.
So I remember, you know, the fight happened, and I was so upset. But you learn fast in boxing. Next time around, Johnny's fighting. I have our own security. Johnny doesn't know. He never knew what was going on. I have him locked up in the room.
He has to concentrate on.
Yeah, he's getting ready. He's warming up. I have all our guys in front of the door, and here comes Bob. And I said, oh, guess what, Bob? Johnny's not fighting. And he says, what do you mean? The TV's there. Why aren't you coming out? That's why he came to get us, because we were late going into the ring. He's like, it's 2 minutes. He hadn't even walked in yet. And I said, he suddenly got a hand injury, because I had found out from contracts, if you get a hand injury, they can't sue you. There's nothing they could do.
You learn the game.
So I said, but it'll cost you $50,000. If you want to get me that in a cashier's check, then Johnny can fight. If not, oh, darn. He was furious at me. From that day forward, it became a chess match between promoters and myself. And you know, Johnny, like I said, he was always so proud of me, because he'd say, him and my brother would laugh, because they'd say, you walk in, you're this girl, and you walk in and all these guys have their whole team and you're by yourself. And you walk out and every single one of them is pissed off and you have a smile on your face. Because I always got what I wanted, because I knew what Johnny was worth, thanks to Johnny.
You know, I do several other genres besides this, and I always give away a lot of my talent. And a man told me once, he says, if you give it away for free, then there's no value in it. And I got to ask you, the great Don King, how was he to deal with? Now, he's a businessman. Don King, everybody knows his backstory.
Yes.
But how was he to negotiate with?
Don was the other side of the spectrum. I mean, Don, he's this imposing, huge figure, bigger than life, and you know, he quit school at 11. He became the numbers runner for the mob in Cleveland. That's how he supported his family. He went to prison for manslaughter, and of course, he got what the light bulb went off in his head. While he was in prison, he heard a fight between Muhammad Ali at the time. I don't remember who Muhammad Ali was fighting, but he decided, that's what I want to do with my future. He's 36 years old. So he gets out of prison and he signs George Foreman, Muhammad Ali, one of the biggest fights in history, the highest paid fight. So we're
at that time.
At that time. So Bob Arum was he was cashing in on Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran and Benitez and Marvin Hagler and Thomas Hearns. This was a huge
He had a good crop of fighters.
Oh yes, but Don started cashing in on the heavyweights. Anyhow, that's the kind of man he was. He was a genius in his own right. He wasn't an educated genius, but he was
genius, smart
very,
genius.
which sometimes are scarier. But this was the difference between Don and Bob. Don knew how to treat people. He knew how to make you, he didn't hate me or disrespect me because I was female. He actually had a staff of females, and he said, they're the most loyal. He said, it's not the men, it's the women. So he wanted me to work with them. I became his protege. He worked with me for 3 years. He taught me the ins and outs of boxing, and yes, you had to watch him, because he was always trying to have one hand in your pocket and the other hand was on your shoulder patting you on the back. That was Don. And he would laugh about it. You'd catch him and say, Don, what are you doing? And he'd say, hey, can't blame a guy for trying. But he was very real, and I liked Don. He's definitely by far one of my favorites. So was Bob, don't get me wrong. I respect Bob in his right, but I just clashed more with Bob.
These are like the big cats, the big dogs, right?
Yes.
How was it an eye-opener that you were becoming a celebrity, and how did you handle the fame that came with Johnny and you?
I actually never looked at it like that. I mean, Johnny has always been, the icon, and I am one of the people that I just loved being in the background. My whole thing was I like to put things together, stand when they were all being on, as things were going by, all our events, whether it was a fight, no matter what it was. When it was over, I would take that deep breath and feel good that it turned out the way it was supposed to.
Fine.
Yes, so I was always behind the scenes. I was always very low key, and like you said, Johnny was bigger than life. He did enough for both of us. I never felt that I didn't believe I had any place other than standing behind the great man and negotiating and working.
But you found your stage
later, which is crazy. I thought when Johnny had passed, it was the worst time of my life. I mean, it was the craziest, most, I can't even put in words, because I mean, it started with my brother who passed away, who was my closest supporter.
That was the accident.
Yes, my brother Robert, we call him Gordy. Right after that, my grandma died, then my mom, then Johnny, and then my sister.
I've had a run like that.
Yes, it does. So all these people were ripped out of my life. But after Johnny passed, I remember thinking, if there's anything to gain by this, is, you know, at least they'll leave him alone now, and they'll leave me alone. Oh no, I just replaced him. And it just became, a lot of people don't know you, so they feel that if they can trash you and they can make you look the worst,
right.
Well, then they know that they're selling stories, and that's what they want. But they don't really know you, and they don't know what you're motivated by or what's behind it. So, you know, it becomes a very hard, you know, life. And at first I would literally cry myself to sleep. And I mean, I was already very emotional. I was already a nervous wreck. I mean, I wanted to end my life several times after Johnny passed away. The only thing that kept me going is my boys. I had these boys to raise.
You had that business to take care of.
That was.
If you were to do it all over again, would you do it?
I would probably say yes. I mean, there has been a lot of tragedies. But there's been a lot of triumphs. There's been a lot of sadness, but there's been a lot of happiness. I mean, with everything bad that happened in my life, I can honestly say something good outweighed it in one way or another.
It balanced out.
Well, it did, because like I said, our legend, he's gone, but people look at him as a boxing legend. I mean, he was my husband, my baby's dad. He was he was an uncle, and he was just a nut. He was fun in and out of the ring. But, like I said, the bad part is he's gone. But the good part is he's leaving us a legacy, and his two boys who will also be fighting. So I'm saying, you can look at...
But even if the boys don't do well, they still know the blood, you know, and all that.
They learned a lot,
you know,
in New York. I mean, it would give me the chills to see my boys interacting with all these great champions. And all these great champions, all of them, they just embraced my boys and wanted the best for them. And it was just, like I said, this experience for them, it was so touching to see.
Did you ever dream as a young woman that the life that was you went into? And you know, you're a young 20-year-old. I want to go to TVI or whatever. And then all of a sudden, boom, you're casting this. How was the shock of it, or what am I trying to say? You know, you're a young woman.
Yes.
And you had the dream. And now this dream. Now you're with him. And you said earlier in the conversation, you know, a good woman always has his man's back. Mm-hmm. I respect that.
Yes.
That's very cool. So you did that, right?
Yes, for 20 years. You know, of course, I did not start out or think in my life that I was going to be a boxing manager. That was not even nowhere in my mind. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't even a boxing fan. I actually had my plan was going to college at the time. I was taking business classes, but I wanted to become a Russian interpreter. And later on, after I was able to retire with decent wages, I wanted to become an archaeologist. I love the past. So that was my whole life. I didn't plan on anything to do with boxing. And when I met Johnny and things just took me that way, it was funny because I was a natural at it. And
that's what I was trying to get. You fell into it like natural.
Yes, it was. But I think what people didn't understand is that, you know, give you another thing. So we're talking about New Mexico. Johnny's fight with Danny, you know, both legends, both great champions.
That's right.
You know, but Danny was slated to knock Johnny out. That was all the hype. And you know, he was younger than Johnny, he was hit harder than Johnny, all these things. So here we are in Big Bear, 3.5 weeks before the fight. I'm scared to death because I'm watching, you know, videos on Danny.
And he's a beast.
Well, he's an angel fire. He has specialists and nutritionists, and he's running 13 miles, and he's going uphill. Johnny's in and out of jail. We have no trainer. He hasn't trained. I mean, you know, you want to talk about being scared, not only as a wife, but as a manager. What do? Can't blow the whistle on the guy and tell him Johnny's not training. Finally, I mean, I had the nerve to call, I got the nerve to call Bruce Trampler. And I said, Bruce, I have a problem. You know, Johnny hasn't been training. And he said, what? he's fighting Danny. And I said, I know. So he said, get him here to Vegas. So there we are in Vegas, 3 weeks out, sparring. He looks like crap. I mean, and we're like just so scared, and he doesn't have the altitude to run in, and he just, he just started running and training. And we have the great Eddie Futch, who was a legendary trainer, but he was an older man. He couldn't even get in the ring. I had to bring in Jesse to hold mitts. It was a mess. And I used to tell Johnny, are you okay? Should we delay this fight? And he said, no.
He's got it.
Yeah, and he's like, and he was very confident. He said, I promise you, and he told Bruce Trampley this, he told me, he told everyone that listened, if Danny beats me, I will kill myself. I will end my life. That's how sure I am that I'm going to win.
Well, they fought in the amateurs. He knew Danny's number, I think. I don't know. That could be hearsay. I need to look that up.
Yeah, I don't think they did because Danny was too young.
Oh, yeah,
from my understanding. They did train in the amateurs together.
Yeah.
Danny Sr. trained Johnny.
Pops?
Yes.
Yeah?
No. Yeah. Danny Sr. is the one that trained Johnny.
Right. They call him Pops now.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I always refer to Tom Crago as Pops. Sorry.
Oh, Pops, yeah.
So I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I want him on the show too.
Yeah, Tom's great. I mean, I call him Tom. Of course, Johnny's the one that gave him his name, Pops, but he's still Tom to me, and great man, and he loves the sport of boxing and supports all fighters as it should be, and of course, a special place in his heart is for Johnny, but anyhow, Danny trained Johnny for a few in the amateur, and so he kind of knew Johnny, and Johnny kind of knew Danny. And later on, years later, when Danny worked with us, he said, I didn't expect Johnny to be that fast. That's what the surprise was. He said, I prepared to fight him and try to outbox him. He said, what I didn't prepare for is his speed. He said, I could never find him.
Yeah.
So that was what he had to say about Johnny.
This is so great. I got two key questions to ask you.
Okay.
And then we're going to end the show. I don't want to end it. We could talk for a long time. This is just, thank you. The first question is, what have you learned from this, and do you have any regrets?
I've learned a lot. I mean, along the way, boxing, the experience that I had, I think you learn fast. It's a fast-paced sport, and like I said, coming in, being a woman and stuff, I've learned that there are no barriers if you bust right through them, and we did that together, Johnny and I. I mean, we started a new thing. We were the first ones to sign directly with the network, and we left on King. After that, all the fighters started doing it. That was partly because of us and what we did and choices we made. So you never stop learning, and it's like I said, it's a great experience. As far as regrets, I mean, I don't think how can you regret when you see it all unfold? He just got inducted to the Hall of Fame. I mean, how can you? I'm not one of those people that would feel sorry for myself, and you have to. Life can be hard, like I said, but it can also be very kind, and it can also be a blessing. It's how you make it. So I don't want to sit there and be one of those, oh, poor me, and I wouldn't do that, because then I'm going to taint Johnny's legacy and who he stood for and what we accomplished in our 20 years and my boy's future.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you.
What does the future hold for you?
That's a loaded question. I don't know. I mean, there's another lesson I learned from Johnny. I used to be one of those people that would plan things out. What I've learned is I really learned, like Johnny used to say, he lived for today. Yesterday's gone, tomorrow may never come. I live for today. Well, I took a page out of his book, and I don't know if I'll be here tomorrow. I don't know if I'll be here next week. I know I'm here today, and the only thing I can do today is my best that I can, and whatever that may be. But I have no clue what life holds.
Well, Teresa Tapia, I sincerely, and I'm so grateful that we did this interview, taking out of your busy schedule to be here on Legacy Boxing Showcase in New Mexico. It's an honor that you sat at our desk, and like I said, boxing fans in New Mexico, if you don't think we got the best show around the town, I don't know what. Teresa, this has been an eye-opener. A lot of, I had talked to a lot of people. I've got an exclusive interview with you. And they go, one cat said, we know her, but we don't really know her. You know, and you know, like me being in this kind of business and boxing and all that, I get criticized. You know.
But that's how you know you're making it. So don't don't take the criticism
I take it all
as something
personal.
bad, because when you're getting criticized, if you're worth talking about, then you've made it.
Good
That's
point.
how you have to look
and
at
I always
it.
think too. Well, you know, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
If it was easy, and like I said, if whether they have something nice or bad to say, you have they're talking about you, and that's what Mickey Rooney told Johnny. I remember Johnny was telling Mickey Rooney one day, he was like, "Oh, Mickey, everyone's always printing stuff and they talk bad." And Mickey says, "Do they spell your name right?" And Johnny said, "Oh yeah." He says, "Then let them talk. As long as it's when they stop talking that you have to worry."
Right.
So that's my advice to you. When they stop talking, DC, then you got to worry. As long as they're talking, whether it's good or bad, they're still talking. You're doing something right.
What an adventure this last month has been.
It has been.
You know, the council, you'll be coming down for the Wells Park inauguration, right?
Yes.
The International Boxing Hall of Fame, folks. Immortalized, Budapest 505 Duke City, out in New York City, the Boxing Hall of Fame. Legendary promoter, manager. Like I said, I want to thank you sincerely, straight up.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Straight up. Boxing fans of New Mexico, this has been a great interview. It'll be coming out real soon, within 3 or 4 days. I'll be shouting it out on Facebook. And I just want to thank our guest. And remember, boxing fans of New Mexico, keep your chin down and keep on swinging. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.